All right. So today we are talking about running FOMO. FOMO means the fear of missing out. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, know what that term means already because people use it all the time. But the fear of missing out in running, that it can definitely affect us as runners in so many ways. And we are definitely going to go into those in today's episode.
Yeah, thankfully, both of us are completely immune to this.
Oh.
I definitely have never fallen for this.
Well, so this is the funny thing is right before I hit record, because Kevin had this idea for our podcast this week. And I said, right before I hit record, I said, so where did this idea come from? And he's like, well, and I was like, was it the Keys 100 this past weekend? And he's like, quite possibly. And then I look over and he's wearing the Keys 100 t-shirt right now.
From last year.
From last
when
year.
I ran the race.
Right.
But it's weird because trying to make the concept, I was thinking of fear of missing out with different like training styles. And then I started writing the outline. And the first thing that I started writing about was different races.
And you are enough. Like the first thing you wrote on here was you are enough.
Yeah.
It's like, is that a subconscious message to yourself?
Possibly, but that's a good message to everyone listening.
100%. And I want you guys to understand that we are runners too. And we, like Kevin said, are not immune to any of this stuff. We are talking as runners, as coaches. We've been doing this for a very long time. We understand it, but that doesn't mean that we never experience it. And I think that's really important to understand and to just point out, because I think that sometimes we as humans think, well, if I understand it, then I'll be safe from it. I'll safeguard myself, right? I'll protect myself from it because I understand it. But we're all still humans with human emotions, and we can't just stop living. We can't just stop experiencing those human emotions. They're still going to come up. But these tools that we talk about in our podcast, and both in this episode and in all of our other episodes, and also inside of the academy where we go deeper on a lot of these things and tools and ways that we can help make ourselves physically and mentally stronger runners, is that we can recognize when certain things are occurring sooner and then use our mental strength and our mental tools to help ourselves not go down into spirals like we sometimes are prone to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's so much of just kind of being aware of what's happening, being aware of your thoughts, and then like why they're coming up, how you want to handle them. Like, you don't have to push negative thoughts away. You can have negative thoughts. You just kind of have to recognize what they are and not just dwell and spiral. You don't have to have a negative thought and say, nope, I'm going to refuse that. I'm just going to live in this only happy world. But you also don't have to dive deeper and deeper and go more and more negative.
Yeah. And sometimes it just happens, right? Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to avoid the spiral. And we're kind of like just talking off the cuff right now. This is totally not exactly what we were talking about like in our outline here, but I think it's important that we just kind of bring it up, because I went through this last weekend, not this past weekend, the weekend before, on Mother's Day. Like, I was in a downward spiral on Mother's Day because my Mother's Day did not go the way that I had expected it to go in my head. And I knew that my thoughts were creating my feelings of disappointment and, you know, expectations that weren't met. I knew all of it was happening in my brain, and I still couldn't pull myself out of it. I was trying to reprogram. I was trying to reframe. And there are some times in our lives where those tools are really helpful and can help pull us out of things. And there are other times where we just need to allow ourselves to be in it. Yeah. We have to allow ourselves to have these moments of disappointment or frustration or whatever it is, and understand that this is just part of the human experience. We don't have to immediately get ourselves out of it. We want to try to avoid those downward negative spirals, and we want to try to avoid just kind of like sitting in it and letting it fester and bringing us down. And obviously, especially if that turns into any sort of like habit or long-term way of thinking, we want to avoid that. But just knowing that life is 50-50, and sometimes things are going to be great and sometimes things are not going to be great, and that's totally normal and totally okay. I just want to make sure that you guys understand that, because working on our mindset is fantastic, and it can help bring us a lot of, or like bring us into a more positive place in so many areas of our lives. But there are going to be times that just aren't that great. And I think that, you know, FOMO is one of those times that kind of can bring us into that arena. And so for those of you that might not even understand what we're talking about here with the Keys 100, Kevin attempted the Keys 100 last year, which is a 100-mile race from Key Largo to Key West. And he was able to complete 65 miles before deciding not to continue on. And so multiple times this weekend, you brought up the Keys 100.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel some disappointment that I was not able to get back this year, but my training wasn't at a place a few months ago when I would have needed to sign up that I think I could have done it successfully.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, maybe if I had changed the last 3 months, maybe if I'd done this, and I'm looking back to things that were like, well, maybe if I had done things differently last winter, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't do things last winter. So now I'm like disappointed in things that I can't change because they're things that happened like 9 months ago. And I think that's sometimes where this FOMO can pop up and really mess with us. So the first way that I want to look at this is essentially races that we think somehow they're going to make us a different type of runner, make us a more qualified runner. People that are like, oh, well, if I run a 5K, then that's better than if I just never race at all. And then there's 5K runners that cross that finish line. And they're like, well, if I want to be a real runner, they have to up it to a marathon. So there's this like pursuit of something that's more or something that's faster. So you can get this idea of I'm going to be enough. I'm enough of a runner now. And that's just, it's ridiculous because you are a runner. Like if you're listening to the running podcast, you're clearly a runner. Like you could be injured right now and you haven't run in a couple of weeks. You're still listening to the running podcast. You're a runner. It counts. If you run walking, it counts. If you're running, but you run 3 days a week, it counts. 5 days a week, it counts. It all counts. You're all runners.
Yeah. It's interesting because some of our newer clients, when they first sign on, I will sometimes pop into their training calendars and just kind of see where they are and how they're doing and make sure that they have a plan inputted, make sure that they're good with everything, right? I like to kind of check in on people, especially the first couple of weeks to make sure everybody's doing well. And it's funny to me when people to see how people record their activities, because with our training calendars, it's fantastic because it syncs directly with Garmin and like some other common apps and like Strava and other things. But a lot of people have Garmin's. And so it will pop into their calendar after they complete an activity, and it will pop in as either a run or a walk or a cross training. And I've checked in with people before because I'll see a walk pop up when they were supposed to have a run on their calendar that day. And I'll ask, well, did you do a walk instead of a run? Is everything okay? Like, cause I always like to say, make sure that they're not hurt, and they're walking instead of running. And they're like, oh no, I did it just as planned. But where they started, they might be early on in their running journey or just getting back into running after injury or something like that. And they're walking more than they're running.
So they counted it as a walk.
So they counted it as a walk instead of a run, right? So say they're doing, say 1-2s where they're running for a minute and then walking for 2 minutes. They're doing more walking than running in that specific workout. So they're like, oh, well, it's a walk. And I would argue, no, that's a run because you're still running, right? And this idea that if you walk, you are still a runner, and that still counts as a run, even if it might not be a run that you were used to, especially if you're someone that is coming back from injury, right? And maybe you were used to, maybe you just ran a marathon a couple months ago, but then you got hurt and now you're trying to come back after it. And you're starting out with a run walk interval type of training, which is a fantastic way to come back into running, by the way. Yes, you're not where you were. You're where you are right now, but that's still running for where you are right now.
Yep. So, I mean, that kind of gets a little bit into like how the training, but it's that mindset of what you are as a runner and trying to put these qualifiers onto what type of runner you are. Whereas you can just fully accept and embrace you're a runner and then, then move forward from that. I'm a runner and this is where I'm currently at with my training. I'm a runner and this is the race that I'm training for.
Right. And a lot of times when we see people kind of falling into this FOMO trap or the trap of not fully accepting that they are a runner or putting some sort of qualifier on there. I'm a slow runner, I'm a jogger, whatever it might be. It often leads to people always wanting more, always trying to prove themselves, to try to complete races that are long enough or far enough or fast enough that will qualify them as whatever they think a real runner is.
Sure.
Right. And that definition is different for every single person. I would invite you to ask a lot of people, if you have people in your circle, what do you think a runner is? Ask runners and non-runners alike, right? Because hopefully, if you're listening to this podcast, you believe that if you run, you are a runner, regardless of the distance or the time or the pace or number of years or level of experience. If you run, you're a runner. And there are different levels of running. There are different experience, numbers when it comes to running. There are different distances, but if you run, you're a runner. And if you constantly are thinking that you need to do more in order to qualify yourself in some way, it's going to lead to feeling very unsatisfied most of the time, or this temporary satisfaction where like you say, okay, well, once I run a 5K, then I'll be a runner, or then I'll be XYZ. Once I hit 30 minutes in the 5K, then I'll be, then I'll finally feel like that's a good thing. And then you do that thing and you're satisfied temporarily. But then there's always something more.
Right, because you can always go faster or further, like whoever you are, the people that just are setting world records. I think there's another world record in the 10K the other day.
Yeah.
They've got to be thinking to themselves, well, if at mile 1.5, I didn't have that like hitch in my step, maybe I could have gone a little bit faster.
Could have pushed a little bit harder.
That's always the thought. And I heard somebody, they brought it back to like the original marathon runner that crossed the finish line, announced the news that we had won, and then dropped down dead. They're like, well, clearly I didn't push that hard. So I had a little bit left in the tank. They're like, yeah, everybody always has a little bit left in the tank. Your brain prevents you from pushing yourself so hard that you're going to drop down and die. Like,
is this actually a true story, or is that just kind of one of those legends that people repeat?
It keeps getting built up further and further of how far the distance was, and did he have to go there or there and back?
And did he actually like drop dead right then and there?
Yeah, there's a lot
in the moment.
There's a lot to it.
Yeah. I feel like it's just one of those stories that keeps getting repeated.
Follow ultra marathon runner Dean Karnazes, who one, runs an enormous amount, and two, loves Greek history. So you can combine those and get all of the details on
all
what
sorts
happened.
Of fun. Yeah. So if you are someone that feels like you always need to do more, it can lead to that feeling of unsatisfaction, temporary satisfaction, or injury, right? Because you're constantly doing more. You're constantly trying to say, how can I get results faster? How can I compress this timeline that I'm working with? Like, oh, this marathon plan is 16 weeks, but I only have 12. Can I do this same thing in 12 weeks? Can I do the same thing in 8 weeks? You try to rush your results because we're looking for that hit of dopamine. We're looking for that satisfaction of achieving that milestone, of achieving that thing. And often that can lead people to overdoing it, overtraining, not allowing enough time or the right kind of training to occur to get you to that goal. And that can lead to a lot of injury.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is, if you know where you're currently at with your running, and you know that you've got a goal of a marathon, often there's 16-week marathon plans. You can find 20-week marathon plans. But if you're not at the start of it and you think to yourself, well, I have to run a marathon to be good enough, then you're just going to try and focus at the end of that plan where you get to cross a finish line. But so much of what we do here at Real Life Runners is trying to get through the plan and enjoying the experience along the way, so that you can feel the success of getting to the starting line. And the finish line comes along with it, but the success of getting to the starting line is such a big win. But in order to do that, you have to enjoy the process, which means the goal has to mean something to you. It can't be like, well, if I get there, then other people will think that I'm a real runner. Then I'll be able to tell other people that I'm a real runner. Because you don't really want the thing. You just think you're going to get this like external validation. You're going to get that like that fleeting satisfaction. You're going to struggle with the consistency of your training, because the training days are going to get long and grueling. If you're training for a long race, like a half marathon, full marathon, every day is not going to be like joy. Every day is not bliss when you head out, but they can all be fulfilling if you really enjoy the experience, knowing that it's leading you towards something that will also be an enjoyable experience. It's going to sort of matter to you, not because you get to be good enough, because you already are good enough, but because you want to see what else is possible.
Yeah, I like what you say there about getting to the starting line. And it reminds me of an email that I just got from one of our clients who was telling me about this race that she had. And she said, thanks for getting me to another starting line.
Yeah.
And that was such a cool thing that, you know, we say that all the time. We say that our job is to get you to the starting line. Yes, it is. We want you to have a great race. We want you to achieve those goals that you have set for yourself. And you know, the training plans that we help people create, that's the goal, is to set them up for that success. But it's the goal of getting to the starting line happy, full of joy, and not injured in the process.
Right.
And as prepared as possible for whatever that race is. And if you're not someone that likes races, you don't have to race either. You know, like because there's not a finish line that proves you're a runner. There's not a starting line and there's not a finish line. I mean, I guess you could say that the starting line would be going out for a run.
Going out for a run.
Right.
Like I was going to say getting running shoes, but it just go out and run.
Going out for a run. Like that's the starting line. That's the qualifier, right? You have to run if you want to be a runner, but there's not a finish line. There's not some sort of thing that you then achieve that then gives you the medal, even though they do give you a medal when you cross the finish line of a race. That medal is not proof that you are a runner. It is just a little bling along the way. It's like a little fun decoration for yourself.
Sure, you get the medal at the end, but you don't get a stamp on like some official card that now says you're a runner. Like that's not what comes at the end of any race. And there's certainly not a distance that does this. No one's watching the Olympics and being like, oh, look at these guys running the mile. If they were real runners, they'd compete in the marathon. Like they're Olympic milers. Right. They're gonna be, I think mentally they've got it together that they've accepted that they're real runners. Like just because they race in a 1 mile distance does not mean, oh, but maybe one day they'll be able to step up and have that full distance.
Yeah.
There was some, I forget who it was that I saw on Instagram, but that's what they were. They were an Olympic miler that was in town to like cheer on their friends at like the Boston Marathon or something like that. And, you know, Joe Schmo comes up to them on the street and didn't recognize who they were. Yeah. And they're like, oh, are you racing this weekend? They're like, oh yeah, no, I don't run the marathon. And they're like, oh, well, what do you do? And they're like, oh, I race 5Ks or I race miles or something to that effect. And they're like, oh, well, maybe one day you can build up your mileage. Like this is like an Olympic runner. They're like, well, maybe one day. And you know, the guy looked at him like, yeah, maybe one day I'll give it a shot.
Yeah. But that's the thing. And I think that is a thought that is shared in the running community, that you just need to keep going longer.
Yes.
Right. Like that's just the natural progression of things. Like people look at me all the time and they're like, they ask, oh, like even someone the other day asked me, how many marathons have you run? And I said 0.
Yep. Yeah.
And they're like, what?
Yeah, totally caught him off guard.
Yeah, I know. And
you had that guy thrown.
I know. And I was like, I mean, I do half marathons, I do 5Ks, I do 10Ks. I said, I run every week. I average about 25 miles a week. So I'm definitely a runner. I just don't want to do a marathon. Yep. And that's okay. And I think that people look at me sometimes, especially as a running coach. And I know that I've even had these feelings before of not enough feeling of like, I'm a fraud or I'm an imposter. Who do I think I am? Being a running coach and never having done a marathon.
Right.
And people just assume that I have, because a lot of running coaches out there have. But would you ever look at some of the most famous running coaches out there that, like you said, could have been Olympic athletes in the 5K? I am not an Olympic athlete either. Okay. But tell them like, oh, you don't know how to coach running because you've never done a marathon? Right. Like, no, of course not.
There's some phenomenal coaches out there that basically their distance was, I mean, Steve Magnus, he was a miler. Mark Coogan, I forget the name of his club. I think he's On Fitness. but he was a steeplechaser. So his
Mhm.
distance was 3,000 meters.
Right.
But now he coaches marathoners.
Mhm.
People aren't like, oh, well, I mean, he only ran the 3,000. What's he going to do at a distance above that?
Right.
Like, because he knows what running is.
Mhm.
And you can learn all this, you can get all this knowledge without having to cross that finish line.
Right.
Like you don't. You can have the experience of running. You know the challenges of running. The challenges of running a 5K are the same challenges of running a marathon. It's just stretched out over different time distances. Like they really are.
Well, and that's why you and I are a team also right?
True.
Because what I lack in experience, you have in experience. And what you lack in knowledge and experience when it comes to like the physical therapy side of things and the strength, and that's where I come in. That's why we're a team, because I don't have to understand exactly, every little step that that person's going through, because you've likely experienced that. And it's also very similar to a lot of other things that I've experienced, so there's different things. Well, we don't have to jump into all of that, but essentially you need to enjoy training and racing, if you even want to race, in a way that's right for you, right? You can try new things, but you don't actually need to do new things all the time. And I think that this is where a lot of people start to feel like, is this good enough? Right? I've been doing the same thing. Don't I need to do more? Don't I need to try to get faster? Don't I need to try to run longer? And the answer is sure, if you want to.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the perfect answer.
If you want to.
If you want to.
But like I actually just went on Instagram this morning after my strength workout, and I did a little, video on my story. And I decided that I'm going to switch up my routine. I'm a big fan of routine and structure and having a plan. And for the past 6 months or so, I've been working on building strength.
Yep.
And I've been, I had a very set structure. Like Monday was an easy run. Tuesday, I did a speed workout. Wednesday was strength, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Like I had my entire week planned out.
But now you're going to train for a marathon so you can be a real runner?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I am going to change things up. So instead of, I'm going to make Monday a strength day, because I used to do Monday as a strength day. And I'm going to focus, and I'm going to change up my strength workouts as well. Like I'm going to do like a more leg focused workout, more upper body focused workout versus more of the combination workouts that I've been doing.
Okay.
Just because I want to see, what is this new stimulus going to do to my body? How am I going to feel with it? Am I still going to run? Am I still going to have training goals? Absolutely. Right. But it's not the idea of training for a marathon right now, with everything that we've got going on in our personal life, with our kids, in our business. I know the amount of time commitment that would take. And I'm not saying I'll never run one. I'm sure I will at some point in time. I even know which one I want to do, but it's just not right now. And that's totally okay.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of needing a new race, needing a new distance, you don't need it. You can certainly try it. And if you've got the time and the space and enough time, both in your life and the right timeline to build from where you currently are to that distance, it's great. You don't need a new race, especially if you're like, well, I currently can run 6 miles, but I need to get to a marathon, and there's another one next month. Like, you don't need that at all. That's just an injury waiting to happen. You don't need a race to justify what you're doing. You don't have to go faster. You don't have to go farther, but you certainly can, especially if it seems like it would be fun for you and you give yourself the right timeline. I think it's kind of like someone who keeps trying to hit like new destination vacations. Like, this is like the person who jumps from one race to the next because the races are what help keep them running. It's the person who's like, oh, well, I'm going to do this dream vacation. And then as they're on that dream vacation, they're planning the next dream vacation instead of enjoying any of the experience of what they're actually doing. They just constantly keep looking ahead to the next thing that could be, quote unquote, bigger and better than what they're currently doing. They lack the enjoyment of what they're doing. So I think they miss out on so much of the experience.
I can relate this to motherhood
also,
and parenthood, because I'm sure you probably have similar thoughts. But I know that with motherhood, it's I saw a video that this elderly woman had made. Like, she was probably, I would guess, like in her 90s on Instagram last week. And she said that she's finally out of the stage of, I should go back and find this video. There's no way to find this video. That's the thing that's kind of stinks about like Instagram and TikTok sometime, right?
I
Like,
have too many things saved.
yeah, it's like if you don't save it, then it's like to go back and try to find it, like forget it. You can't actually, like, how do I search up like old ladies speaking about life? Like,
Nope.
you know what I
Not
mean?
finding that. It's gone.
But it was about, won't it be great when?
Yep.
Right? Like, oh, I can't wait till, right? I can't wait till the end of the year. I can't wait till they're out of diapers. I can't wait until they can make lunches for themselves. I can't wait until they can stay home by themselves so that we can go out on a date.
Yep.
I can't wait till this. I can't wait till that. And she said that she's out of that phase of her life of like, I can't wait till what? There's nothing.
Yep.
There's nothing.
All the things
It's already passed, right? And I think that when we're in those phases, it's true. Like they say, the days are long, but the years are short.
Yep.
And as a mom, I'm going to try to not get emotional. God, what is it about lately? I have just been super emotional when I like start to thinking like about our kids
and graduation season,
but like they're getting so big and so old and it just happens so fast. And I'm a deep thinker anyway, but like, let alone when you have kids just throwing it in your face every single day and you're like, God, why are you so big? And how are we here so far? But it's the same kind of issue of like, oh, I can't wait until that time.
Yep.
And if you're constantly thinking that way, then you're missing out on the beauty of the current moment.
Yeah.
Like you're not appreciating your kids for where they are right now and for the phase that you're in right now. And that's such a beautiful phase, no matter what it is, right? If they're in the baby phase, if they're in the toddler phase, if they're in the teen phase, which we all know is quite challenging. There's a lot of beauty. They're all a challenge, right? Just in different ways, right?
And you look back and you're like, oh man, that part was great, but they're all great. The whole fear of missing out of I want to get to the next thing because the next thing is going to be amazing means that what you end up doing is missing out on what's currently happening. The fear of missing out on what's next, the fear of I want to get to this new exciting thing actually leads you to missing out on the current experience.
I think we should just end the podcast there.
No, we have a whole second part.
But that's a mic drop right there, right?
Like the mic is attached to this beautiful stand.
But for real, like it's true. Like if we're constantly thinking about what's next or needing to do more, you're missing out on what's happening right now.
Yep.
The fear of missing out is leading you to miss out.
Yep.
That's so meta.
Yes.
Crazy.
Now we're going to have to pay Facebook because you said meta. All right.
It's not a thing.
It's definitely a thing. Okay. There's the second idea of this. Besides the whole fear of missing out on racing, there's also the fear of missing out on different training things. There's a lot. If you scroll in the social media, there are all sorts of different techniques of, well, you have to do this type of workout or this type of workout. If you got a running group nearby, you have to join that running group and then you have to do what that group is doing, which then also leads to you signing up for whatever race that group is signing up for.
True.
And they're great. But here's the thing, all sorts of different training styles can work for you. They just can't all work for you simultaneously. That's, I think, part of the issue.
That is part of the issue because, like you said, if you are feeling like you're missing out on something, it can lead people to constantly switching their training methods, right, to the newest trend or to what their friend did. There's a lot of trends when it comes to running, right? People say, oh, like it's just running. It's like, not really. I mean, it is.
It is.
But there's all sorts of things in the world of running that changes, in the world of strength training for runners that change, in the world of nutrition for runners that change, right? And all of those things affect how you feel as a runner. And so if you're constantly training or switching the kind of training that you're doing or jumping from plan to plan and not actually giving that plan or that method a time to work, it can lead to you never really reaching your potential. It can lead to training above your level, which means you're overtraining, or under your level, which means you're undertraining and you're not going to actually get the gains that you want to get from that training cycle because you're constantly just jumping around. You're not giving it actually enough time to work.
Right. Like you need a plan that's going to make the most sense to you. And there's a whole lot of training plans that can help you achieve this goal. It's just a matter of finding one that seems logical, that's going to fit into your lifestyle, that's going to allow the consistency that leads to the best results. And it's, we have training plans available. There's lots of training plans available out in the world. Leaping from one to one to one to one every week, or trying to mix several different plans into a thing. If you put out a whole bunch of plans, this is honestly how I got into training in the first place. I found several plans that I thought all would kind of work, and I combined them into a plan and said, all right, let's try this.
Yeah.
But then I stuck with that.
Right.
And that's the thing, is once you've got a plan, you got to kind of stick with that, barring any like crazy injuries, huge life-changing things that say, okay, veer drastically from the plan.
Yeah.
But you've got to stick with a plan for a while so that it gives you the best chance of consistency.
Yeah. And I think there's a couple of things that I want to mention about that. Like, number one is that you created a plan that you believed was going to work best for you.
Yes.
And then you stuck to it.
Yep.
Right. So there's a lot that you can say about taking several different plans, kind of looking at them, putting in the time and the effort to understand the purpose behind that plan, what they're trying to accomplish with that plan, or what you're trying to accomplish with those different types of workouts, and then putting them together to personalize a plan that's right for you.
Yeah.
Right. Versus, there's a couple different training plans I have, and this week I'm going to follow this plan. And then next week I'm going to follow this plan. And then the following week I'm going to follow this plan, because I kind of like all three of them. So I'm just going to kind of combine them, but you don't combine them all into one comprehensive plan.
No.
You just kind of pull pieces from like 2 or 3 different plans and just kind of throw them all together in one big mishmash pot. And sometimes you get a delicious casserole, and sometimes you just get something that you're like, that did not work.
Thing that I made last Thursday that was like, it was edible, but it wasn't good.
No, I think that was Friday when I went out with my friends, right? Because I didn't have that.
No, that was delicious. You would not have liked it, but the girls and I put it down. It was good times. Sometimes there are meals that can be made when Angie is not home, and they're delicious.
And they usually involve pasta.
and cheese.
Lots of pasta and cheese.
We'll just put more cheese to it, and we'll put it under the broiler. It's going to be amazing.
But it's true though, right? There are lots of different ways that you can succeed. And the funny thing about this is that oftentimes the most successful plans, or the plans that will allow you to achieve the most consistency and therefore the best results, are some of the more boring plans.
Yeah, that's true. But
like, people always think that they need to change it up, right? Like, people are like, well, I have to do a different strength workout every single day, and I have to do a different type of run every single day. And that's just not true.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that can be great.
Yes.
Sometimes, like, if you're the person that wants the variety in a strength training, because you're like, I don't want to go to the gym and do the same thing, or go to my home gym and lift the same exact things, then maybe the variety leads to consistency. But unless you really get the reasoning behind some of the strength exercises, like, you have a variety of strength routines that you can put all sorts of people through.
I do.
But they're all very connected to each other.
Of course. And they're all, I mean, there's science behind all of it.
Right.
And I also understand, okay, I'm trying to hit all of these muscle groups within the week. So if I combine these, you can just combine the same exercises in different orders, or in different sequences or techniques. Like, you can hit the same muscle group with a couple different exercises, so that people are still getting the benefit. But at the same time, I would like to even challenge that idea and say, why don't you like doing the same thing over and over again? Right? Like, oh, it's boring. So do you want constant stimulation, or do you want results?
Well,
and I'm not saying
people choose constant stimulation because you get that dopamine hit of trying something new and different, and therefore it's exciting.
And that takes us back to that FOMO, right? This idea of FOMO is hurting your running, this fear of missing out, or this fear of needing to be constantly changing things up or constantly stimulated. God forbid you feel bored with your training. Like, guess what, guys? Sometimes training is boring. Running, you chose running if you need constant stimulation. Like, think about it, right? Like, running is kind of a boring activity.
Yeah.
There's ways to make it more exciting. There's ways to change things up for sure. But overall, we as distance runners are running for 30, 45, 60, 90 minutes or more doing the same thing over and over and over again.
And if you're doing it correctly, the vast majority of it is at a very easy, comfortable pace,
Exactly.
which is like the most boring way to run. Is you don't get to like change up the effort levels. You don't get to mix up and be like, oh, but here I'm going to go a little faster, and here it's just nice and long and controlled and relaxed, and it's kind of dull sometimes.
Right. And it's good to change things up because you want to be progressive in your training, right? Like you want, if you're doing the same exact thing, the same exact way over and over and over again, you're going to hit a plateau. So it is important to progress your training, and that could be in volume, that can be in training, like load, that can be using weights or resistance, that can be changing up the exercise, it could be training, changing up what you're doing in your speed workouts. There's lots of ways that you can add variety in, but sticking with a plan that's going to keep you consistent, and consistency oftentimes is achieved when you know what you're doing, so having those exercises or having that circuit that you are familiar with, you don't have to figure something new out. Think about what your brain wants to tell you when you're doing something new. Our brains love to get overwhelmed very easily, right? So if we're doing something new, and if we're constantly doing something new, excuse me, like if you have a brand new strength routine every single week, you're like, oh shoot, I don't know these exercises. Now I have to look them up. It's again, one more obstacle, one more hurdle for you to go to. So this fear of missing out of like, oh, I want to find a new strength routine. Now you've just spent 30 minutes searching YouTube, and then you're like, okay, now I'm going to follow it. And you're like, oh shoot, like I ran out of time.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, my strength routine is going to be fit into that entire 30-minute window that I could try and find a new strength routine. So sometimes it can occasionally be fun to change things out. Sometimes it can be productive to change things out.
Yes.
Join the local running group for their speed workout, because you wanted to mix it up in your training. Maybe do a different strength routine because you want to mix it up, and that mix up helps you with consistency. But if you're doing this constantly, if you are regularly pushing aside your training plan, that's just literally not following a plan.
Right.
That is the epitome of fear of missing out. Oh, well, I want to make sure that I get in that kind of workout, and that I'm running with this group, and that I'm lifting with these people. And it's never following something for you. It's always just trying to do whatever that other group is doing. So that's going to never allow you to reach your full potential because you keep hopping from one thing to the next.
Yeah. And if you like running with a group, we're not knocking that by any means. I love running with a group, but I also understand that there are runs that I do with the group, and then there are runs that I do on my own. And I know that I can build those group runs into my plan. Like we've got a client that is over in the UK, and she loves running with her running club. And we just know, okay, Wednesday night, she's going to go run with the running club, and it's going to be slower than her normal pace, and it's going to be shorter than her normal pace. And that's fine. We're just going to take that into consideration when planning out the rest of the week.
Yeah, and we've got people that are in all sorts of different running clubs, or they weren't going to go with the running club, but then they decided to join them on a Tuesday, and suddenly their Tuesday turned into like a 5K fun run.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, I don't know about that speed work on Wednesday because Tuesday become a low-key 5K race, which that's fine. You can put that in, but then you have to just think about how that hits your overall training cycle. Did you just do like a low-key race on a Tuesday? That Wednesday training speed day doesn't exist anymore. Now it's a recovery run. Maybe it's an off day, depending on what happened on the day before, depending on your current training cycle.
Right. And that's why, again, it's so important for you to understand the purpose behind your training, the purpose behind each of your runs, so that you can make those adjustments every now and then if you want to, so that you're not stacking a bunch of hard days on top of each other and putting yourself at a greater risk for injury.
All right. Real quick on this last one, the latest fitness trends, they do deliver results. Because if you're trying something new and it's something that you've never done before, you're going to see some relatively quick results. So why shouldn't we just keep trying new trends because we constantly get these little wins along the way? Like, it seems like if I'm actually seeing results, if I can see an increase and an improvement in my running by doing this new thing, why don't I just keep hopping from new thing to new thing to new thing?
You're just going to like throw that over on my side of the court?
I mean, I can answer my own question.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have my opinion on it. So what do you think?
I think that you keep taking the first step up a whole bunch of different staircases. Like that's my thought on it
Yeah.
is
It's a
sure
good metaphor.
you can take that first step. That first step's relatively quick, but as you keep trying to climb higher and higher up the staircase, it's harder to take the next steps. So you keep taking step one and then back to zero, and then step one and back to zero, but you're never climbing anything. You're never getting the cumulative benefits. You just keep taking the first step of a whole bunch of different staircases.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to what your goal is. You know, like if your goal is just to be in shape,
yeah,
then sure, like jumping from fitness
Cool.
trend to fitness trend is going to make sure that you are in shape, and you're gonna, if you like are someone that loves constant variety, then that's something that can work for you. But if the goal is long-term growth and improvement, doing that is not going to get you there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right. So it's all about the goal. Like if you just want to like, I just want to be active. And so, you know what? I'm going to take a month and I'm just going to play pickleball. And then in the next month, I'll do some weightlifting. And next month, I'll do this. You just like to be an active person and live an active lifestyle,
which is fine.
Totally fine. But you probably aren't trying to build for anything long term.
Right.
Other than general health and fitness.
Which is totally fine. But if you're trying to improve yourself as a runner, the leaping from activity to activity to build general fitness is not necessarily going to build running specific fitness.
It won't, right? And that's the thing. You might get a little bit faster. So say you decide you're going to incorporate some very fast interval training into your weekly routine.
Let's go back to the Tabata trend.
Oh, the Tabata, yeah, or the HIIT training,
yep.
Right? You will likely get faster in shorter distances in the short term, but that progress will plateau, and it doesn't build your long distance endurance.
Right.
At the time, people were touting Tabata and the HIIT training as the everything workout. Yes. Right? Like it is the most time efficient workout.
Yeah, it was a shortcut.
Yeah. You're getting your strength and your cardio all in one. You're decreasing the wear and tear on your joints. There's like all of these benefits for high intensity interval training. And sure, high intensity interval training is beneficial as a piece of your overall training plan. Like we do interval workouts with our athletes all the time, but that is not the only way that you should be training your body if your goal is, I want to be a long distance runner. Right. Which most of you listening to this podcast, that is the goal.
Right. So I think that it's okay to try some of these new trends and see how it works with you. But going all in on a new trend is not necessarily the best way to improve your long-term fitness. It kind of abandons what you were doing. So you have to be able to maintain what you have been doing and not be like, oh, I'm going to try this entirely new thing and give up on all these gains that I've made from something else.
Or not necessarily giving up on them, but doing that in addition to what you're already doing.
Yeah.
I think that that's more likely. That more of what I've seen, at least from people, is that
keep stacking the new thing on top of the new thing on top of the new thing.
Right. This is what I'm doing, but now I'm going to add in 3 days of HIIT training because I heard it's really good, but I'm also going to keep my running.
Oh, goodness.
Right. And now I'm going to add in some CrossFit because they say CrossFit's really good.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to do some YouTube videos to try to improve my strength here. And they just try to keep adding. Going back to what we were talking about in the beginning is always doing more.
Yep.
Fear of missing out on the latest thing that's going to help improve your running leads a lot of people to just overdoing it and just adding too many things into their plan and then getting burnt out or injured.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to get injured and then there's certainly not more because you're just completely sidelined.
Yeah. And that's nowhere that anybody wants to be. And it's definitely not where we want to see you guys. So how do we avoid this feeling of running FOMO? I think.
What do you got? How do we avoid this?
We have the Real Life Runners method.
Perfect.
I know this is what we're going into. So understanding, I think number one is like understanding that it's going to come up. Like it's normal to have this like sense of FOMO, this fear of missing out of like, oh, maybe I should try something else. Oh, maybe I should do this. Like having that thought is totally normal.
Yep.
It's what you choose to then do about it, like the action that results from that thought. If your thought is, oh, maybe I should try that thing, and then you go try that thing every single time, that's problematic. If your thought is, oh, maybe I should try that thing, and then your thought is, yeah, but I'm already on a training plan, I should just stick with what I'm doing. And then maybe next cycle, I can try to incorporate that. Fantastic.
Yep.
Right. So I think there's 3 steps that we teach inside the Real Life Runners Academy to help you understand the best way to train for you. Okay. Step number 1 is awareness. It's knowing where you are. And speaking of that, if you haven't signed up yet, we're doing a brand new free training where we are going to actually walk you through this process. It's next week. We start Monday, May 29th of 2023. So I don't know when you're listening to this episode, but that's the date I'm talking about here. So May 29th, if you haven't signed up yet, head over to realliferunners.com/challenge and you can sign up. It's a 3-day free training that we are going to help you build your own training plan. Okay. That is the goal of this training, that by day 3, you are going to walk away understanding what you need to incorporate in your plan that's right for you in your life with the goals that you have set. Okay. So step number 1 is awareness. It's getting very clear on where you are right now. So that when that FOMO comes up of like, oh, the group is doing 10 miles on Saturday. And you're like, yeah, but I've only run 5 up to this point. Maybe I shouldn't jump into a 10-mile group run yet.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that was my FOMO a few months ago of there's still openings. I could sign up for this race. That came back again this weekend when the race was actually happening, of knowing where I'm at, that I could not safely and effectively run the race that I wanted to run. Yeah. I had full awareness of where I was and the timeline that it would take me to get to where I wanted to be. That was my awareness that helped diminish. Yeah. Did I completely lose all thoughts of disappointment? No, of course not. They're still there, but it allowed me to not do stupid things.
Yeah. Well, and we talk to our clients about this all the time too. They're like, I'm thinking about doing this half marathon or this marathon. I'm like, okay, well, where are you right now?
Yep.
And they tell me, and I said, okay, like either, yes, you have totally enough time, right? Sounds like a great plan. Let's make a plan for you to get there. Or, okay, if you want to do it, there's a chance you could do it, but it probably wouldn't feel good in the process.
Yep.
Right. Or getting to that race, like, you probably wouldn't feel good during that race because it's just a rushed timeline, right? And having this sense of awareness and knowing exactly where you are right now, both in your running and in your strength and mobility, and then also in your nutrition, your recovery, and your mindset. Those are the 5 pillars we teach. Having a really clear understanding of where you are will help you to set a more accurate timeline.
Yeah.
Like
it's a better guess.
It's not accurate, but it's like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Reasonable
Timeline, right? Of like the timeline that's going to have the best chance of setting you up for success. And who knows, things might pop up along the way. That timeline might end up going out the window. Maybe we're wrong in that assessment also. And maybe you would have been ready a little bit sooner, but I'd rather be wrong on that side of things than trying to rush somebody through a process and getting them hurt in that process.
No, agree every time. I'll always err on the side of you might need a little bit longer to reach that goal.
Right. Exactly. All right. Step number 2 is intention. Okay. So after you know where you are, number 2 is know where you want to go, set a goal and understand why you want that thing. Like we were talking about before, of this idea of, I need to just keep doing more. I'm not a real runner until ... Understanding that you can set whatever goal you want that's going to make you happy, that's going to make you feel fulfilled. And it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. It doesn't matter what, you think, or it does matter what you think. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks is going to make you a quote unquote real runner or not. What do you want to accomplish right now? You can have a big long-term goal, like a really big goal out in the distance that, you're kind of working towards, but then you also have to have some shorter goals along the way. They're going to help get you to that point. And once you understand what you want and why you want that thing, when you choose something that actually means something to you, then you're not going to have to worry about motivation as much. People always think that they're not motivated. How can I improve my motivation? I just need to get more motivated. And there's a difference between short-term motivation and long-term motivation. And, what you want for yourself, what you want to accomplish, is not always the same thing as what you feel like. And we just did a whole episode on this just a few episodes ago.
Yep.
About, overcoming that feeling to actually get the things you actually want.
Yeah. And look, setting the goal does not mean this whole idea of avoiding the FOMO doesn't mean that your goal can't be a new, different, exciting thing that you've never done before.
Yeah.
Like if you are excited, you've run 5Ks, you want to try a half marathon, go for it.
Oh, heck yeah.
Have the right timeline on it and go for it. Make that your thing.
Right.
I have the goal of running the 100-mile race,
Mhm.
but I have the timeline and knowledge of where I am, so I can still have that goal. I
Yep.
still have the why behind it. It sounds ludicrous, but I am excited to continue to give it a shot.
Yeah.
And so that it's fine if it's big and crazy.
Mhm.
If it means something to you, it's still worthwhile.
We encourage big and crazy.
Yeah, we do.
Right? Like this is like earlier in the episode, like hopefully that's not what you guys heard from us. Like we encourage big and crazy goals, be audacious, be like throw some really big things out there that where you are right now, you cannot accomplish that thing, but you are willing to try. You are willing to put in the work to see if you will be able to accomplish that thing. Because quite honestly, I believe that we can do way more than we believe we're capable of if we just do the right kind of work with the right timeline. If we allow ourselves the right timeline to get there and enjoy the process, because if you enjoy the process, you're going to be a lot more consistent, and consistency is what's going to allow you to stack win upon win over and over and over again. That's going to get you those long-term results that you really want.
Right, which I think takes us to step 3 here. So know where you are, set the goals, and then take the actions, which involves actually getting a plan that's going to actually make the most sense for you,
right,
and sticking with that plan that makes the most sense for you, knowing where you are and what both your short and long-term goals are.
Yeah, and I think that that's really one of the powers of having that customized plan, having that personalized plan, is that you don't question it as much.
It feels stable. It feels safe.
It feels it's yours.
Yes.
Right? Like it feels like it's yours. So there's this sense of ownership around it also.
Yep.
Whereas if you're just following whatever plan in like the Nike app or the Peloton app or the Garmin app, whatever it is, you're like, oh, well, there's probably 1,000 people following this same plan. This isn't my plan.
Yeah.
Right. But when you make a custom plan for you, or work with a coach that makes a plan that is for you in your life, with your experience and your goals and all of the restrictions that you have and all the freedoms that you have, that there's something to that, I think, that will make you more inclined to stick with it.
Yeah,
because there's that sense of ownership
that definitely helps push some of the FOMO away, because you're not missing out. You have a plan based off of the goal that made sense to you.
Right.
So you're not missing out on anything because you carefully figured out what the goal is, and this is the plan that's going to help get you there. And sure, there may be some shiny objects that you can see along the way, but you know that this plan is getting you to a goal that matters to you, and it allows you to pass by some of the shiny objects on the sidelines.
Yeah, and because those feelings of FOMO are still going to come up. And so when you go through this process, it's not like they're just going to magically disappear.
That'd be neat.
But when those feelings do come up, then you can just remind yourself what you're doing. You can remind yourself, nope, this is where I am. This is the plan I'm on. This is my goal, right? Like, does that fit into this? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then don't do it, right? Like, if the answer is yes, I think I can fit that in, then great, right? Like sometimes it's okay to skip a workout or to do something else instead, but that should not be the norm, right? The norm should be following the plan. But every now and then, if hey, my friend just came into town and I'm going to go on a run with her instead. And, she's not exactly where I am. And so I'm going to go a little bit shorter today, or I'm going to go a little bit slower today because I want to run with my friend. Fantastic.
Great.
Fantastic. Or maybe my friend's a little bit faster than me. Okay, great. Now I'm going to make that my speed workout for the week.
Yep.
Right. And then I'm going to skip the speed workout that I actually had planned that week.
Right. It all just still fits to you.
Right. And replacing that one workout is not going to make a difference. Right. Even skipping that one workout is not going to make a difference in the long term in, your overall goal.
In the long run,
In
shall
the
we
long
say?
run, yes, for sure. So that's the best way to avoid FOMO is really those 3 steps: awareness, knowing where you are, setting that intention, and then 3 is action, having that customized training plan that's right for you. And again, if you want help, this is exactly what we'll be doing in our free challenge next week, starting May 29th, realliferunners.com/challenge. And if you're listening to this episode after our challenge, this is exactly what we do inside the academy as well. Okay. Our group coaching program is called the Real Life Runners Academy. And we take you through these exact steps. We help you figure out exactly where you are. There's tests that we give you, run tests, strength tests, mobility tests, so that you know exactly where you are. We help take you through a goal setting process so that you can understand what you need to be focusing on right now. Even if you have really big goals in the future, fantastic. We want you to have those. But then how do we break down those big goals so you know what the focus is right now to actually help you get there? And then 3 is, again, building that customized plan that's right for you with a lot of coaching, support, and community along the way. So you can check that out over on the website again, realliferunners.com/academy. If you're ready to jump into our coaching program, we would love to help you out. And right now we're actually running a 7-day free trial for our group coaching program. So you guys can check all of that out over on the website, sign up for the challenge, sign up for your 7-day free trial, depending on where you are and what level of commitment you want to have right now.
Excellent.
Good
synopsis of all the options that people have just within our little world.
Well, because we want to help. That's it. People are like, why are you guys doing this? It's like, because I want to help. I want to help more people run their life. I want to help create more happy runners in the world, because if we have more happy runners that are healthier and happier, the world's just going to be a better place.
Run their life. We should put that on a t-shirt.
I have a t-shirt that says that.
Excellent. All right. I think that's about what we've got for today.
All right, you guys, as always, thank you for joining us. If you haven't left us a review yet, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review and share this episode with your friends if you liked it as well. This has been the Real Life Runners Podcast, episode number 309. Now get out there and run your life.